picked up the pieces and has come up with one of the most amazing sounding amplifiers. And
Billy Gibbons is one of rock's most recognizable figures, but he's also built a reputation for being blunt and saying exactly what he thinks. And over the years, that reputation has left a trail of backstage clashes, quiet feuds, and moments that didn't sit well with some big names in the industry. From a shocking backstage clash to a legal battle tied to a blues icon and a collaboration that didn't go the way he wanted, Gibbons has gone head-to-head with some of the biggest artists in music. And some of the names on this list will shock you. Billy Gibbons' controversial reputation. Billy Gibbons is recognized as one of the legendary performers of his time. As the frontman and guitarist of ZZ Top, a band formed in Houston in 1969, he helped shape the sound of Texas blues for more than 5 decades. His guitar playing is instantly identifiable, characterized by a thick tar pit tone, heavy use of Les Paul guitars, and a minimalistic yet powerful sound that other musicians have spent careers trying to copy. He is nicknamed the Reverend for his almost preacher-like delivery of blues riffs. But his visual identity is just as memorable as his music. He wears wraparound sunglasses, a long beard that became part of the act in the late 1970s, and a collection of custom automobiles that would make any car enthusiast jealous. But behind that cool image and those signature riffs, Gibbons has a somewhat controversial reputation. He's known for being very outspoken, and this has caused real tension in the music industry. Over the years, he has publicly criticized more artists than many fans realize. He often presents his comments as matters of artistic principle rather than personal attacks. Yet, he still comes across as polite, but very blunt. Billy Gibbons did not become a legend by accident. The man worked for every bit of it. His whole approach to music comes down to one simple idea: make people move. Fancy solos and showing off how fast you can play do not interest him. Gibbons once said that you can definitely make someone wiggle in their seat a little bit if you know where you are heading with it. That philosophy has guided everything he has done for more than 50 years. Most musicians cannot change with the times without losing themselves, but Gibbons did. In the 1970s, ZZ Top was a blues rock band, playing dirty, sweaty music that sounded like a Houston bar at 2 in the morning. Then the 1980s arrived with synthesizers and drum machines. A lot of old-school rock bands tried to follow the trend and ended up looking weird. ZZ Top added synthesizers to songs like Legs and Sharp-Dressed Man, but the guitars never disappeared. The sound got bigger and cleaner, but it was still them. The band got more popular as time went on, something that almost never happens. But for all his musical discipline, Gibbons has never been afraid to speak his mind. People who have worked with him say the man is polite in public, but he has a sharp tongue and a long memory. Personal attacks are not his style, but he attacks ideas, and he attacks approaches to music that he finds lazy or fake. When he says something dismissive about another artist, he is usually defending something he believes in. Electronic dance music once drew his criticism because he claimed it was missing guitar music. Over the years, Gibbons has made it known that certain artists do not sit well with him. One of those conflicts involving a well-known artist became famous for reasons that will leave you shocked. The Gwen Stefani conflict. One of the most controversial encounters of Billy Gibbons' career happened backstage at a concert in Singapore, and the person on the other side of the argument was Gwen Stefani. Stefani has been one of the biggest names in music for nearly 3 decades. She first found fame as the lead singer of No Doubt, a band that blended punk and pop into something entirely new. Songs like Just a Girl, Don't Speak, and Hey Baby made her a star in the 1990s. She has won 3 Grammy Awards, sold more than 30 million records worldwide, and served as a coach on The Voice. She is also known for being a true professional who shows up on time, prepares thoroughly, and takes the health of her voice very seriously. In September 2009, Stefani was booked to perform at the Formula One Rocks Singapore concert, a major event tied to the Formula One Grand Prix that featured some of the biggest names in rock and pop. ZZ Top was also on the bill, and what happened backstage that night became a story that both Billy Gibbons and Stefani have never forgotten. Singapore has some of the strictest anti-smoking laws anywhere on the planet, and the country does not joke around about this rule. The fines for defaulting are steep, and the enforcement is serious. Tourists and celebrities have been caught off guard by Singapore's regulations for years, and some have learned the hard way that the authorities do not make exceptions for famous people. ZZ Top apparently did not get the memo. During their performance on stage in front of thousands of people, the band indulged in the band habit like they were playing in a Texas roadhouse in 1975. Singaporean authorities were not amused, and the band faced a significant fine for violating the smoking ban. The exact amount was never made public, but people close to the event described it as a whopping penalty that got the band's attention. The real drama, however, did not happen on the stage. It happened backstage in the dressing room area, where Gwen Stefani was trying to warm up her voice before her set. Vocal warm-ups are not optional for a singer like Stefani, who has spent decades training her voice and relies on a careful routine before every performance. She needs quiet, she needs clean air, and she needs to focus. But the backstage area was filled with smoke from Gibbons and his bandmates, who didn't seem to care. Stefani was trying to prepare, but she was uncomfortable due to the band's behavior. For a singer, that was not just annoying, but potentially damaging to her voice. Reports claim that Stefani was furious, and she said something about it to the band. Several reports have noted that Gibbons did not apologize for the behavior. He did not stop the act, nor did he step outside. Instead, he allegedly looked at Stefani and said something that has followed him ever since. He told her, "We do what we do, honey. I just hope you have a good time. Always do, mate." The word honey did not help the situation, and it came across to many people as dismissive at best and condescending at worst. Stefani was a professional who had earned her place on that stage. She was not some opening act begging for respect. But to Gibbons, the response seemed natural because he came from an older generation of rock musicians who never apologized and called people honey as a matter of habit. The incident revealed a real gap between old-school rock and roll and the modern music industry. Gibbons grew up in an era when backstage behavior was barely regulated, and people did all sorts without anyone raising an eyebrow. Stefani came up in an era of professionalism, vocal health, and brand management, and those two worlds were bound to crash into each other eventually. Gibbons has never publicly apologized to Stefani or admitted that he was wrong, because as far as he is concerned, he was just being himself, and that stubbornness is part of what his fans love about him. But that same stubbornness has put him on the wrong side of more than one argument over the years, and the Gwen Stefani conflict is just one example of Gibbons rubbing someone the wrong way. There are other artists he has criticized, and other musicians he has dismissed, and one of those conflicts involved a musician that Gibbons should have respected, but did not. The Grange copyright infringement lawsuit. One of the biggest legal fights of Billy Gibbons' career involved the estate of a blues legend who helped invent the music that Gibbons had built his entire sound on. ZZ Top released a song called La Grange on their 1973 album Tres Hombres, and that song became the band's signature track. The riff was simple, it was catchy, and it made people want to move. The song achieved global circulation as a phonorecord, was recorded by other prominent artists, was featured in a national television advertising campaign, and was performed at hundreds of ZZ Top concerts over the course of 5 decades. But someone noticed something about that riff, and that someone was not happy about what he heard. In 1948, a young blues musician named John Lee Hooker and his collaborator Bernard Besman wrote a musical composition called Boogie Chillin'. A recording of the song was sold to the public later that year, and it eventually sold up to 1 million copies. Hooker eventually signed over his rights to Besman, which made Besman the owner of the publishing company that controlled the song. Besman registered Boogie Chillin' with the Copyright Office in 1967, nearly 20 years after it first came out. He also registered a second version of the song in 1970, and when Hooker recorded a third version for an album called Canned Heat, Besman registered that one too in 1992. From where Besman was sitting, he had done everything correctly. The paperwork was filed, the registrations were official, and the rights belonged to him. But in 1991, Hooker allegedly told Besman about a ZZ Top song called Grange, and when Besman listened to it, he became convinced that the song borrowed heavily from the Boogie Chillin' compositions he had been protecting for decades. He reached out to ZZ Top's music publisher, a company called Hamstein, expecting them to work something out with him. But Hamstein did not want to negotiate. Instead, they went to court in Texas and asked a judge to declare that ZZ Top had done nothing wrong. Besman was not about to let that slide, so he filed his own lawsuit in California against ZZ Top, Billy Gibbons, Dusty Hill, Frank Beard, their manager Bill Ham, and several of their companies. Just like that, the legal fight had begun. The whole case came down to one question, and it was a strange one. Under the Copyright Act of 1909, which was the law when Hooker first recorded Boogie Chillin', a song got 28 years of protection from the date it was first published, with a chance to renew for another 28 years after that. But there was a catch. If a song was published without the proper copyright notice, it immediately fell into the public domain, meaning anyone could use it for free. So the only thing that mattered was whether selling a record to the public counted as publishing the song. La Cienega, which was Besman's company, argued that the song was not published until they filed their copyright notices in 1967, 1970, and 1992. In their view, selling records to the public did not count as publishing the music itself. ZZ Top argued the opposite. They said that selling those records in 1948, 1950, and 1970 was absolutely publication. And because those early records did not have proper copyright notices, the songs had been free for anyone to use for decades before ZZ Top ever wrote Grange. The Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals had to make a decision, and they sided with ZZ Top. The court ruled that selling records to the public counts as publication under the 1909 law. That meant Boogie Chillin' was published in 1948, the second version in 1950, and the third version in 1970. Since none of those early releases had proper copyright notices, the songs were in the public domain by the time ZZ Top released Grange in 1973. The court threw out La Cienega's lawsuit, and ZZ Top walked away with a clean win. The ruling set an important legal precedent for how copyright publication is defined when it comes to sound recordings, and it pretty much shut down any chance of anyone making a similar claim against the band. Grange is still ZZ Top's signature song, and Gibbons has never had to pay a dime to John Lee Hooker's estate. But while ZZ Top won the legal battle, the moral side of the story was more complicated. John Lee Hooker, the man they had won in court, was a true pioneer. a man who helped create the blues language that every rock guitarist since has borrowed from freely. Gibbons has always talked about his debt to the bluesmen who came before him, and he has named Hooker as an influence more than once. However, Gibbons was not impressed with the way the entire conflict went, nor with the role the men involved played. The professional rift caused by Bill Ham. John Mayall was one of the most important figures in British blues history, though a lot of casual fans have never heard his name. He was an English blues singer, guitarist, organist, and songwriter who earned the nickname the Godfather of British Blues, and he earned it honestly. His band, the Blues Breakers, served as a launching pad for some of the most legendary guitarists of all time, including Eric Clapton, Peter Green, and Mick Taylor. Those three men alone changed the sound of rock music forever, and they all came through Mayall's band. In 2024, just before his death, Mayall was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, a recognition that had been a long time coming for a man who never chased the spotlight but quietly shaped the careers of those who did. Billy Gibbons crossed paths with John Mayall around 1969, when Gibbons was still trying to figure out what ZZ Top was going to become. Mayall was already an established figure at that point, a respected elder statesman of the British blues scene, while Gibbons was a young Texan with a fuzzy guitar tone and a lot of ambition. The two of them ended up jamming together, and the session went well. Someone in the room that day was paying very close attention, and that someone would soon become the most powerful person in ZZ Top's career. His name was Bill Ham, and he would go on to manage ZZ Top for more than 30 years. Ham reportedly saw Gibbons jam with Mayall around 1969, which was the same year he first discussed a management deal with Gibbons. Ham had a very specific vision for ZZ Top. He wanted them to be mysterious and to be isolated. He wanted them to be that little old band from Texas, not a group of guys who showed up on everyone else's records. So Ham did something that seems extreme, even by the standards of rock and roll management. He allegedly prevented Gibbons from collaborating with other artists for 3 decades. Gibbons was reportedly barred from working with John Mayall or any other outside musicians for decades, not because of any personal dislike for Mayall, but because Ham believed that every outside collaboration diluted the brand. Mayall became collateral damage in Ham's strategy to maintain ZZ Top's mystique. The man who had helped launch the careers of Clapton, Green, and Taylor was suddenly off-limits to one of the most distinctive guitarists of his generation. This professional freeze lasted approximately 30 years. 3 decades of saying no to jam sessions, no to guest appearances, and no to recording with friends and heroes. Gibbons stayed inside the ZZ Top bubble, just as Ham wanted, and the bubble preserved something that might have been lost otherwise. But it also cost him years of creative collaboration with musicians he admired, something that hurt him deeply. Ham finally split with the band in 2006, and he died in 2016. By the time he was gone, the damage to those potential collaborations had already been done. But the good news is that the freeze did eventually thaw. In 2001, while Ham was still very much in charge, Gibbons managed to record a song called Put It Right Back with John Mayall for Mayall's album Along for the Ride. It took 32 years, but the two men finally made a recording together. That track marked the end of one of the longest professional freezes in rock history, and it happened so quietly that most fans never noticed. The incident is rarely discussed by Gibbons, and it is not hard to understand why. But there was another conflict in Gibbons' career that was not so quiet. This one involved a band that millions of people loved, and millions of other people loved to hate. The band was Nickelback, and the issue had nothing to do with copyrights, management contracts, or professional freezes. It was about something much simpler and much more public. The Nickelback collaboration. Nickelback formed in a small Canadian town called Hanna, Alberta, back in 1995, and by the early 2000s, they had become one of the most commercially successful rock bands on the planet. The lead singer and guitarist was a man named Chad Kroeger, and whether people loved them or hated them, the numbers did not lie. Their album, All the Right Reasons, released in 2005, sold more than 8 million copies in the United States alone. But here is the thing about Nickelback. They were also one of the most critically derided and publicly mocked bands of their entire era. Music critics tore them apart. Comedians made fun of them. Internet forums turned hating Nickelback into a cultural hobby. They became a symbol of everything wrong with mainstream rock, a band that people loved to hate. So when news broke that Billy Gibbons had worked with Nickelback, a lot of people were confused. Why would the guitarist from ZZ Top, a genuine blues legend, want anything to do with a band that had become a punchline? The answer was more complicated than fans realized, and inside reports suggest that Gibbons was not exactly thrilled with how things turned out. Kroeger has said that he and Gibbons met somewhere on the road, just two musicians crossing paths at the right time. While making All the Right Reasons, the band wanted someone else to play a cool guitar part. Someone who was as far away from their own sound as you could possibly get. They thought of Billy Gibbons immediately. So they reached out, and Gibbons said yes. He flew to Los Angeles, carrying all of his hard drives for the recording sessions, ready to work. Gibbons ended up contributing to 3 songs on that album. The first was called Follow You Home, where he played slide guitar parts and multiple solos. Kroeger described the experience by saying that as soon as Gibbons touched a guitar, it was amazing. The second song was Fight for All the Wrong Reasons, which also featured Gibbons on guitar. But the third song was the one that really mattered, and it was called Rockstar. When Gibbons first heard the track for Rockstar, something happened that surprised everyone in the room. He jumped up from the console and started yelling that the song was a hit, a huge hit, a massive hit. Kroeger asked if Gibbons wanted to be on the track, and Gibbons was reportedly ecstatic about the idea. He definitely wanted in. So he started improvising lines on the spot, speaking them out loud, and the band wrote down what he said and slotted his words into the track. That spoken word vocal between the verses, the part where a gravelly voice talks about wanting a rock star lifestyle. That is Billy Gibbons. So far, the story sounds like a happy collaboration. A legend hears a hit, jumps on board, and helps make the song better. But here is where things get interesting, and where inside reports suggest that things went south for Gibbons. When asked about the band publicly, Gibbons didn't have much to say about them, despite the fact that he had worked with them on a project. He praised Chad Kroeger's vocal stamina specifically, saying the man could sing for days. That was nice, but the public immediately noticed what was missing from his public comments. He did not praise the band's songwriting, their musicianship, or their guitar work. The praise was narrow, strategic, and carefully worded. It suggested professional distance rather than genuine artistic endorsement. People who followed the story closely noticed that distance. They soon realized that Gibbons had framed his praise that way to avoid associating himself with their broader artistic reputation. He was not about to become the poster child for defending one of the most mocked bands in rock history. The music video for Rockstar came out in 2006, and it featured a long list of celebrities lip-syncing to the lyrics. Billy Gibbons appeared multiple times in the video, voicing his spoken word lines. He did his job with them, but the enthusiasm he had shown in the studio did not carry over into how he talked about the band afterward. Whether he actually regretted the decision or just chose to keep his distance publicly, the result was the same. Gibbons never really defended them when the jokes started flying. He just stayed quiet. There was one musician, however, that Gibbons never stayed quiet about. One guitarist he admired so deeply that some people have called it almost like jealousy. The Jimi Hendrix connection. Jimi Hendrix is widely regarded as the greatest and most influential electric guitarist in rock history, and that is not an opinion that many people argue with. He pioneered the use of feedback, distortion, the wah-wah pedal, and studio effects that no one had thought to try before him. He played the guitar with his teeth, behind his back, and on at least one memorable occasion, he set the instrument on fire on stage. He released only 3 studio albums before his death at the age of 27, but those 3 albums changed music forever. Every rock guitarist who came after him has had to reckon with what Hendrix did first. Billy Gibbons had the chance to reckon with Hendrix up close, and the experience shook him in ways he has never forgotten. Before ZZ Top existed, Gibbons had a band called the Moving Sidewalks. They played psychedelic rock, and in 1968, they were given an opportunity that most young bands could only dream about. They were asked to open for the Jimi Hendrix Experience on Hendrix's first United States headlining tour. That meant playing the same stages as the most exciting guitarist on the planet, night after night, in front of thousands of people who had come to see the main act. The Moving Sidewalks were required to play a 45-minute set, but there was a problem. Their own material fell a few minutes short of that time. So they made a bold decision, one that could have gone very wrong. They decided to cover 2 Hendrix songs, Foxy Lady and Purple Haze. Playing an artist's own songs back to them while opening for that artist is either brave or foolish, and Gibbons was not sure which one it was until he walked off stage after the set. Standing on the side, grinning, was Jimi Hendrix himself. That was the beginning of a friendship that would change how Gibbons thought about the guitar forever. The 2 bands stayed in the same hotels during the tour, and Hendrix and Gibbons would take rooms at opposite ends of the hallway with their doors wide open. They jammed together frequently, learning songs from each other late into the night. Hendrix would have a turntable brought up to the room, and they would sit together listening to guitar music, studying the players who had come before them. According to some accounts, Hendrix mentioned Gibbons or his band on a talk show, possibly the Dick Cavett Show, when he was asked which guitarists he liked. For a young musician like Gibbons, that kind of recognition from Hendrix was almost unbelievable. But here is the part of the story that Gibbons does not talk about as often, and it is the most revealing part. After seeing Hendrix perform night after night, Gibbons realized that his own psychedelic approach with the Moving Sidewalks was weak by comparison. Everything he had been doing before that tour suddenly felt amateurish. Hendrix taught him volumes about what a guitar could actually do, and that education came with a heavy dose of professional insecurity. Hendrix set a bar that felt almost impossibly high. The contrast between the 2 guitarists could not have been starker. Hendrix was revolutionary, theatrical, and explosive. He made the instrument do things that seemed like magic. Gibbons was rooted, groove-oriented, and reserved. He did not need to set anything on fire because his sound came from the way he held a note, not from the spectacle around it. But for a while, after that tour, Gibbons had to reckon with the fact that he would never be Hendrix. And no one else would ever be Hendrix either. Some people have described Gibbons' feelings about Hendrix as almost like jealousy, but it was more like awe mixed with a quiet recognition that he had to find his own path because the path Hendrix had taken was not available to anyone else. Hendrix died in 1970, just 2 years after that tour, and the guitar world lost its most inventive voice. Gibbons never forgot what he learned from those late-night sessions in hotel rooms with the doors wide open. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to click on the next video on your screen, like this video, and subscribe to our channel for more updates.